The stars outside Haven Station looked the same as they always did. Quiet. Peaceful. Captain. Park Do-yan stood near the observation window of the command center and watched them with tired eyes. He had been the commander of this mining colony for 11 years. In all that time, nothing exciting had ever happened. Haven Station was far from Earth, far from everything. It floated at the edge of human space like a forgotten child. 12,000. People lived here, miners, engineers, families, children who had never seen Earth's blue sky. They worked hard. They lived simple lives. They were happy. Do-yan liked it that way, Captain, said a voice behind him. It was Lieutenant Yuna, his communications officer. She was young, maybe 25 years old, with sharp eyes and quick hands. The morning report is ready. Nothing unusual. Do-yan nodded without turning around. Good. Keep it that way. Yuna smiled and returned to her station. The command center was small compared to military ships. Only 6 officers worked here at any time. There was no need for more. Haven Station had no enemies. Humanity had been at peace for 80 years. Chief Engineer Tai Wu walked in with a cup of coffee in his hand. He was an old man with gray hair and rough hands. He had built half of this station with his own tools. The water recyclers are acting up again, he said. I told them 10 years ago we needed new parts. Did anyone listen? No. Fix it, Do-yan said. I always do. Tai Wu sat down heavily in a chair. One day this whole station will fall apart, and everyone will say, why didn't Tai Wu warn us? And I will laugh from my grave. Yuna giggled. Do-yan almost smiled. Then the alarm started. The sound cut through the quiet morning like a knife. Red lights flashed across every screen. Yuna's fingers flew over her console, her face suddenly pale. Captain, she said. Her voice was shaking. We have contacts. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace? Do-yan turned around. How many? Yuna looked at him. Her eyes were wide with fear. Over 200 ships. They're not human. The room went silent. Tai Wu dropped his coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but nobody noticed. Do-yan walked to the main screen. The image showed Haven Station at the center, surrounded by red dots. So many red dots. They kept appearing one after another like drops of blood spreading across clean water. Identify them, Do-yan ordered. Vorath Dominion, Yuna whispered. It's the Vorath. Do-yan felt his heart grow cold. Everyone knew about the Vorath. They were conquerors. They had destroyed dozens of civilizations across the galaxy. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who resisted. Humanity had never fought them directly. The two species had stayed away from each other for centuries. Until now, they're hailing us, Yuna said. Put it through. The main screen changed. A face appeared. It was not human. The creature had gray skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. It wore golden armor covered with medals and symbols. I am High Marshal Dreven, of the Vorath Dominion, the creature said. Its voice was deep and proud. You are now subjects of the Dominion. Surrender your station immediately. Resist, and you will be destroyed. Do-yan stared at the screen. His mind was racing. Haven Station had 20 security officers. 3 small patrol ships. 1 old defense cannon that hadn't been fired in 30 years, against 200 warships. You have 1 hour, Dreven said. Choose wisely, human. The screen went dark. The command center erupted in chaos. Officers shouted questions. Alarms kept screaming. Somewhere in the station, people were crying. Do-yan raised his hand. Quiet. Everyone stopped, Yuna, he said calmly. Send a message to Earth. Use the old military beacon. Emergency frequency, Alpha 7. Yuna stared at him. Sir, that frequency hasn't been used since the Great War, 80 years ago. I know. Send it anyway. She hesitated for only a moment. Then she nodded and turned to her console. Her fingers moved quickly, typing the emergency code that every communications officer memorized but hoped to never use. Tai Wu walked up to Do-yan. His face was grim. You know they can't save us, right? Even if Earth sends help, it will take weeks to arrive. We'll be dead by then. Do-Yan nodded slowly. I know, but they need to know what happened here. They need to know that the Vorath are coming, so we're bait. We're a warning. Tai Wu was quiet for a long moment. Then he put his hand on Do-Yan's shoulder. Then let's make sure they remember us. The next 4 hours were the longest of Do-Yan's life. He ordered an evacuation of non-essential personnel to the inner sections of the station. The security teams took up positions at every entrance. The 3 patrol ships launched and formed a defensive line. It was pathetic. Everyone knew it. But they did it anyway. When the Vorath attacked, they did not hold back. Their ships moved like wolves hunting sheep. The patrol ships fought bravely. They destroyed 2 enemy fighters before they were blown apart. The old defense cannon fired once, twice, 3 times. It damaged a Vorath cruiser. Then the cruiser fired back, and the cannon was gone. The station shook with explosions. Lights flickered. Children screamed. Do-Yan stood in the command center and watched his people die. Hull breach in Sector 7, someone shouted. Medical bay is gone, another voice said. They're boarding us. Do-Yan drew his sidearm. It was a small weapon, meant for personal defense. Against Vorath soldiers in full armor, it was almost useless. All personnel, he said into the intercom. His voice was steady. This is Captain Park Do-Yan. Fight if you can. Hide if you cannot. Protect the children. And know that I am proud of every single one of you. The doors to the command center exploded inward. Vorath soldiers poured through, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Do-Yan fired. He hit one in the neck. It fell. Then something struck him in the chest. And he collapsed. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Yuna being dragged away by gray hands far away. In the cold emptiness of space, a tiny signal raced toward Earth. It was small, weak, easy to miss, but it carried the screams of 12,000 people on the Vorath flagship. High Marshal Drevin watched Haven Station burn. His officers cheered around him. They raised glasses of victory wine and praised his name. A glorious conquest, one of them said. The humans fell like insects. Drevin smiled, showing all of his sharp teeth. This is only the beginning. Their homeworld will fall just as easily. Humans are weak. They have no warriors. No real fleet. We will crush them within a month. His officers cheered louder. None of them noticed the tiny signal slipping past their sensors. Flying faster and faster toward a distant blue planet. None of them knew that. They had just made the worst mistake in Vorath history, and none of them understood that humanity had not forgotten how to make war. They had simply chosen not to, until now. The night shift at United Defense Command was always quiet. The building sat in the heart of Seoul, a massive structure of glass and steel that watched over humanity's peace. Most of the officers on duty were drinking coffee and watching empty screens. Nothing ever happened during the night shift. Analyst Hannah was 23 years old. She had graduated from the military academy 6 months ago. Her job was to monitor deep space communications. It was boring work. Most nights, she heard nothing but static and automated reports from distant colonies. Tonight was different. At exactly 3:47 a.m., a console beeped. A signal was coming in from the outer sectors. Hannah frowned and adjusted her headset. Probably just another routine message from a mining ship. Then she saw the frequency. Code her blood turned to ice. Alpha-7. Emergency military beacon. That code had not been used since her grandmother was a child. Since the Great War, when humanity had fought for survival against enemies that wanted to erase them from existence, Hannah's hands were shaking as she decoded the message. The words appeared on her screen one by one. Haven Station, under attack. Vorath, Dominion. 200, plus warships. Request immediate assistance. This is not a drill. Oh no, Hannah whispered. She stood up so fast that her chair fell over. Commander, she shouted. Commander, wake up. We have an Alpha 7 signal. The night shift commander, an older man named Seok, rushed over to her station. He read the message 3 times. His face went pale. "Get me Admiral Kong," he said. Now, Admiral Kong Mira was attending a diplomatic dinner when her phone buzzed. She was 56 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much death. The other guests at the dinner called her the Iron Veil. They meant it as a compliment. She wore the name like armor. She looked at her phone. One message from Commander COK, Alpha 7, Haven Station, Voreth. Mira's expression did not change. She calmly excused herself from the table, walked outside, and got into her waiting car. "Headquarters," she told the driver. "Maximum speed." 20 minutes later, she stood in the command center of United Defense. Around her, officers ran back and forth, shouting information and pulling up tactical displays. On the main screen, she could see the location of Haven Station. A red circle marked it. "Enemy territory now? How long ago?" Mira asked. Commander Siok answered. "The signal was sent 14 hours ago. Given the distance, the attack is probably already over." Casualties? Unknown, but Haven Station had 12,000 civilians. Mira closed her eyes for a moment. 12,000 people. Miners, families, children, all of them now dead or captured by the Voroth. She opened her eyes. They were hard as steel. "Activate Protocol Homecoming." The room went silent. Everyone stared at her. Protocol Homecoming was a legend, a story that officers told each other in whispers. It was said that after the Great War, humanity had hidden its true military power. They had built warships in secret, stored them in hidden bases across the solar system, and waited. Waited for the day when they would be needed again. Most people thought it was just a myth. They were wrong. "Admiral?" Suk said carefully. "Are you certain?" "If we activate Homecoming, the whole galaxy will know. They will see what we've been hiding." "Good," Mira said. "I want them to see. I want them to remember." Now she walked to the central console and pressed her hand against the scanner. A voice asked for confirmation. "Admiral Kung Myra, authorization code. Iron Veil, 77 Alpha. Activate Protocol Homecoming." For a moment nothing happened. Then every screen in the room turned red. Alarms began sounding across the planet. Not just in Seoul. In Tokyo. In New York. In London. In every city on Earth, deep beneath the surface of the moon, lights turned on for the first time in 80 years. Massive doors opened, revealing rows upon rows of warships covered in dust and darkness. Their engines began to glow. On Mars, underground hangars cracked open. Ships rose from the red sand like ancient warriors waking from sleep. In the asteroid belt, hollowed-out rocks split apart. Inside them were carriers, destroyers, and battleships. The largest human fleet ever assembled, and at the center of it all, in orbit around Earth, a single ship received its activation signal. It was called the Hansen. It was the flagship of the United Earth Navy. 3 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could crack a planet in half, Admiral Kung Mira's ship. Within 6 hours, the full scale of humanity's hidden power became clear. 3,200 warships, 50 carrier groups, 200,000 fighters, crews that had trained in secret for decades. Waiting for this moment, Mira stood on the bridge of the Hansen and watched the fleet assemble on her tactical display. Ships were still arriving from hidden bases across the solar system. The numbers kept climbing. "Ma'am," Commander Siok said, walking up beside her, "the fleet is almost ready. We can launch within 12 hours. Mira nodded. "What do we know about the enemy?" "Vorath Dominion. They've conquered 43 species in the last 2 centuries. Their standard invasion fleet is about 500 ships. Based on the signal from Haven, they sent 200. They probably thought it would be enough." "It was enough," Mira said quietly. Haven Station had no defenses. They killed civilians. Esiok was quiet for a moment. "Revenge? Justice." Mira turned to face him. "The Voroth think we're weak. They read our old reports. They saw that we stopped building warships. They assumed we had grown soft, but we didn't stop building. No, we just stopped showing." Mira looked back at the tactical display. 80 years ago, we fought a war that almost destroyed us. We won, but we lost so many. So we decided to hide our strength. We wanted peace. We thought if we looked weak, no one would bother us. And now they touched our people. Mira's voice was cold. They killed our children. They thought they could celebrate their victory and move on to Earth. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. They celebrated too early. At exactly noon the next day, Admiral Kangmira addressed the fleet. Her face appeared on every screen, in every ship, across the entire solar system. Soldiers of Earth, she said. 80 years ago, our grandparents chose peace. They buried our weapons and hoped we would never need them again. But peace is not weakness. It was a choice. And now someone has forced us to make a new choice. She paused. Behind her, through the bridge windows, the fleet stretched across the stars like a river of light. The Varath attacked Haven Station. They killed 12,000 of our people. Men, women, children, and then they celebrated. They called us weak. They said we would fall like insects. Her eyes hardened. They were wrong. We are the United Earth Navy. We are the children of survivors. Our ancestors crawled out of the mud, split the atom, and reached the stars. We have faced extinction before. We are still here today. We remind the galaxy why. She raised her hand. All ships, set course for Haven Station. Maximum speed. The fleet moved as one. 3,000 warships turned toward the darkness of space and began to accelerate. On Earth, people watched the ships leave. They did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They prayed, not for victory, for mercy, because they knew what was coming, and they knew the Vorath did not. The great Hall of the Vorath flagship Eternal Conquest had never looked more beautiful. Golden banners hung from the ceiling. Tables overflowed with food and drink from a dozen conquered worlds. Music played from speakers hidden in the walls. It was a celebration fit for a conqueror. High Marshal Drevin sat at the head of the longest table. He wore his finest armor, polished until it shone like a mirror. Around him, his officers laughed and drank and told stories of their glorious victory. Did you see how their little ships exploded? One officer said, like toys. Like children's toys. And the station, another added. They actually tried to fight back. With what? Security guards and mining tools. He laughed so hard that wine spilled down his chin. Drevin smiled and raised his glass. To the conquest of humanity, the first of many victories. To the High Marshal. His officers shouted back. They drank deeply in a dark cell below the Great Hall. Captain Park Do-yeon sat against a cold wall and listened to the celebration above him. He could hear their laughter through the metal floors. He could feel the vibration of their music. His body was broken. The Vorath had beaten him during interrogation. His left eye was swollen shut. 3 of his ribs were cracked. Blood had dried on his uniform, but he was still alive. Lieutenant Yuna was in the cell next to his. He could hear her breathing through the thin wall. She was alive too. So was Chief Engineer Taiwu, somewhere on the station. The Vorath had kept them as prisoners, probably to use as hostages later, Captain. Yuna's voice was weak. Are you awake? Yes. I sent the signal. Before they captured me, I sent it. Do-yeon closed his eyes. Good. You did good. Do you think anyone heard it? Someone heard it? But will they come? Do-yeon was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Earth, about the home he had not seen in 15 years, about the stories his grandfather had told him when he was a child. Stories about the Great War, about humanity's darkest hour, and how they had survived it. They'll come, he said finally. They always come. Above them, the celebration continued. High Marshal Drevin was giving a speech. He stood at the head of the table, his 4 eyes gleaming with pride. My brothers, he said, today we begin a new chapter in Vorath history. For too long, we have ignored this sector of the galaxy. We thought there was nothing here worth taking. We were wrong. He gestured toward a screen on the wall. It showed a map of human space. Earth at the center. Dozens of colonies spread across the stars. The humans control rich worlds, fertile planets, valuable minerals, and they have no army to protect them. Their ships are old. Their soldiers are soft. They have lived in peace for so long that they have forgotten how to fight. His officers nodded eagerly. We took Haven Station in less than 4 hours, Drevin continued. Their homeworld will fall even faster. Within a month, humanity will be a slave species of the Dominion. Their technology will be ours. Their resources will be ours. Their people will serve us. He raised his glass again. This is our destiny. This is our glory. The room erupted in cheers. Subcommander Velis did not cheer. He sat at the far end of the table, watching his drink instead of his commander. Velis was older than the other officers. He had served in more campaigns than he could count, and something about this victory did not feel right. It had been too easy. He had studied the humans before the invasion, not just their current military, but their history. He had read about the Great War, about the weapons they had built, about the enemies they had destroyed. Humans were not peaceful creatures. They were violent, brutal. They had killed each other for thousands of years before they'd even reached space. They had fought wars over land, over resources, over ideas. They had invented weapons that could burn entire cities in seconds. And then, suddenly, they stopped. 80 years ago, they put down their weapons and declared peace. Their fleet shrank. Their armies disbanded. They became miners and farmers and scientists. Why? Velis did not know the answer, and that worried him. Subcommander, one of the junior officers, called out, "You look troubled. Drink more. Celebrate. We are victorious." Velis forced a smile. "Of course. Forgive me. I was just thinking this for scholars and slaves. Tonight, we are warriors. Come, join us." Velis raised his glass and pretended to drink. An hour later, a technician approached Velis with a tablet in his hands. His face was confused. "We're detecting unusual readings at the edge of the system." Velis took the tablet. The screen showed a cluster of energy signatures. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Then thousands. "What is this?" Velis asked. "We don't know, sir. They appeared suddenly, like ships dropping out of hyperspace. But that can't be right. The readings suggest over 3,000 contacts." 3,000. Velis felt his stomach drop. He stood up quickly and walked toward the High Marshal. The celebration was reaching its peak. Officers were dancing and singing victory songs. "High Marshal," Velis said. "Sir, we have a situation." Drevin turned to him with annoyance. "What is it? Can't you see I'm busy?" "Sensors are detecting multiple contacts at the system's edge. Over 3,000 ships." The music continued. No one else had heard. Drevin stared at Velis for a long moment. 3,000. That's impossible. The humans don't have 3,000 ships. They barely have 300. "Sir, I'm only reporting what the sensors show." Drevin laughed. "It's a malfunction. Space debris. Sensor ghosts. The humans couldn't possibly." The lights flickered. Every screen in the Great Hall changed at once. The music stopped. The victory banners became surveillance feeds from the outer system. Ships. Human ships. More ships than anyone had ever seen in one place. They filled the screen like stars in the night sky. The room went silent. High Marshal Drevin walked slowly toward the main screen. His face had lost its color. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, trying to understand what he was seeing. "That's not possible," he whispered. "Where did they come from? Where were they hiding?" On the screen, a new signal appeared. An incoming transmission from the human fleet. Drevin's hand trembled as he accepted it. A human woman appeared on the screen. She had short gray hair and eyes like frozen steel. She wore a military uniform covered with medals and ribbons. "This is Admiral Kong Mira of the United Earth Navy," she said. Her voice was calm, cold, absolute. "You have attacked human civilians. You have killed our people. You have 12 hours to surrender unconditionally." She paused. "Shh. and I will personally ensure that not a single one of your ships leaves this system alive." The transmission ended. The great hall was completely silent. The golden banners still hung from the ceiling. The tables still overflowed with food and wine, but no one was celebrating anymore. High Marshal Drevin stood frozen in front of the screen. Behind him, his officers stared with wide eyes and open mouths. In his cell below, Captain Park Doyen heard the silence. He felt the fear that had suddenly filled the ship, and for the first time in days, he smiled. "They came," he whispered. They actually came. The fleet had arrived, and the celebration was over. Admiral Kong Mira stood on the bridge of the Hansen and watched the enemy fleet scramble into formation. Through the massive windows, she could see them. 200 Voroth warships, arranged in defensive lines around Haven Station. They looked impressive. They looked scared. "Status report," she said calmly. Commander Seok checked his displays. "All ships in position, Admiral. Fighter squadrons are ready to launch. The enemy is holding formation around the station. They're using civilian hostages as shields." "Clever," Mira said. "They think we won't attack the station, will we?" Myra was quiet for a moment. On the tactical display, she could see Haven Station at the center of the enemy formation. 12,000 people had lived there. How many were still alive? "Contact Wing Leader Jun-ho," she said. "Tell him I have a special mission for his squadron." 5 minutes later, Jun-ho's face appeared on her screen. He was young, maybe 30, with eager eyes and steady hands. "The best pilot in the fleet, Admiral," he said. "My squadron is ready." "Good, I need you to do something difficult. I need you to get inside Haven Station." Gun-ho blinked. "Inside, the station is surrounded by enemy ships." "I know. But we have survivors in there. I'm receiving a signal from Chief Engineer Taiwu. He's coordinating resistance inside the station. If your squadron can create a distraction, his people can sabotage the Vorath from within." Jun-ho was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "A distraction. You want us to fly through the entire enemy fleet, reach the station, and not die?" "Yes, sounds fun." He straightened up. "We'll get it done, Admiral." "I know you will." Mira out. The channel closed. Mira turned to Commander Seok. "Begin the attack." Space exploded into light. 3,000 human ships opened fire at once. Missiles streaked across the darkness. Energy beams sliced through the void. The Vorath defensive line shattered like glass under a hammer. On the Eternal Conquest, High Marshal Drevin screamed orders at his officers. His fleet was falling apart around him. Ships that had conquered a dozen worlds were burning, breaking, dying. "Turn fire," he shouted. "All ships concentrate fire on the enemy flagship." The Voroth fleet responded. Hundreds of weapons locked onto the Hansen. Energy beams and missiles flew toward Myra's ship. The Hansen's shields absorbed them like rain hitting a mountain. "Damage report," Myra said. "Shields at 94%, Seok replied. "Minor damage to forward sections. Nothing critical." Mira nodded. "Continue the assault." The human fleet pushed forward. Destroyer groups flanked the enemy formation. Carriers launched wave after wave of fighters. Battleships punched holes in the Vorath line. It was not a battle, it was an execution. Wing. Leader Gun-ho led his squadron through the chaos. 12 fighters, flying in perfect formation, weaving between explosions and debris. Enemy ships tried to intercept them. Jun-ho's pilots shot them down without breaking stride. "Stay tight," Jun-ho said into his radio. "We're almost there." Haven Station grew larger in his window. The Voroth had placed 5 cruisers directly around it. They were using the station as a shield, daring the humans to fire on their own people. Wing Leader, one of his pilots, said, "Those cruisers are blocking every docking bay. We can't get through." Jun-ho studied the tactical display. She was right. The cruisers had positioned themselves perfectly. There was no way in. Unless... "Follow me," Jun-ho said. "I have an idea." He turned his fighter toward the largest cruiser. His squadron followed without hesitation. "Sir?" His co-pilot asked nervously. "We're heading straight at them. I know. They'll shoot us down. Not if we're too fast." Jun-ho pushed his engines to maximum. His fighter accelerated until the stars became streaks of light. The cruiser filled his entire window. Its weapons were turning toward him. At the last possible second, Junho pulled up. His fighter scraped across the cruiser's hull so close that sparks flew from the contact. His squadron followed, each pilot threading the needle between the cruiser's armor and its shield generators. And then they were through. The docking bay of Haven Station opened before them. Gunho fired his landing thrusters and brought his fighter down hard. His squadron landed beside him. They were inside. Chief Engineer Taiwu Junho broadcast on the Resistance frequency. "This is Wing Leader Junho, we're in? What do you need?" Taiwu's voice came back, rough and tired, but alive. "Thank the stars. The Voroth have hostages in the main control room. They also have a deadman switch connected to the reactor. If we attack directly, they'll blow the whole station. What's the plan? I need your pilots to create chaos. Hit their communication towers. Destroy their supply lines. Make them think the attack is coming from everywhere at once. While they're distracted, my people will disable the deadman switch." Yunho smiled. "Chaos? We can do chaos." Outside, the battle continued. The Voroth fleet was being destroyed ship by ship. Drevin watched from his bridge as his officers panicked around him. Half of his cruisers were gone. His carrier group was burning. Fighters were being shot down faster than he could count. "Hi, Marshal," Subcommander Vela said urgently. "We need to retreat. We cannot win this battle. Retreat." Drevin turned on him with fury in his eyes. "The Voroth do not retreat. We are conquerors." An explosion rocked the ship. Alarms screamed. Officers fell from their stations. A direct hit to the port side. Someone shouted, "We're losing atmosphere in sections 12 through 15. Drevin stared at the tactical display. The human flagship was cutting through his fleet like a knife through flesh. It was unstoppable. Every weapon they fired at it bounced off its shields. What kind of ship was this? What kind of people had built it? "Sir," another officer cried, "we're receiving reports from Haven Station. Human soldiers are inside. They're destroying our equipment and freeing hostages." Drevin felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear inside Haven Station. Lieutenant Yuna heard explosions in the distance. The guards outside her cell ran toward the sound, shouting in their alien language. A moment later, the cell door opened. Chief Engineer Taiwu stood there with a stolen weapon in his hands and a fierce grin on his face. "Come on, Lieutenant. We're getting out of here, Taiwu." Yuna jumped to her feet. The captain already free. He's leading a group toward the control room. Move. They ran through corridors filled with smoke and chaos. Human survivors were everywhere, fighting back with tools and stolen weapons. The Voroth were confused, overwhelmed. They had expected to guard helpless prisoners. Instead, they found warriors. In the main control room, Captain Doyon faced the last group of Vorath soldiers. He was wounded, exhausted, and armed with nothing but a metal pipe. He charged anyway. Outside, Admiral Kong Mira watched the battle end. The Vorath flagship was crippled and drifting. The enemy fleet was destroyed. Only a handful of ships remained, and they were running away as fast as their engines could carry them. "Shall we pursue?" Commander CO cast. Mira shook her head. "Let them go. Let them tell their empire what happened here." On her screen, a new transmission appeared. It was from Haven Station Captain Park. Doyen's face filled the frame. He was bloody, bruised, and smiling. "Admiral Kang," he said. "Haven Station is secure. The hostages are safe. The enemy is defeated." Mira allowed herself a small smile. "Well done, Captain. Help is on the way. Thank you, Admiral." Doyen paused. "I knew you would come," always Mira said. "We always come for our people." The transmission ended. The Battle of Haven was over. Humanity had won. The Voroth. Flagship Eternal Conquest floated dead in space. Its engines were destroyed. Its weapons were silent. Smoke poured from a dozen holes in its hull. Around it, The wreckage of 200 warships drifted like fallen leaves. High Marshal Drevin sat in his command chair and stared at nothing. His golden armor was covered in dust and blood. His officers were dead or dying around him. The celebration banners still hung from the ceiling, torn and burned. "Sir," Subcommander Velis said quietly. He was the only officer still standing. "The humans are hailing us. They're demanding surrender." Drevin did not respond. "Sir, we have no choice. Our fleet is destroyed. Our weapons are offline. If we don't surrender, they will finish us." Slowly, Drevin turned to look at him. His 4 eyes were empty. "How?" he whispered. "How did this happen? They were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be farmers and miners. Where did those ships come from?" Velis had no answer. The main screen flickered. Admiral Kung Mira's face appeared, cold and patient. "Hi, Marshal Drevin," she said. "Your fleet is destroyed. Your soldiers are captured. You have 60 seconds to order full surrender. If you refuse, my ships will open fire on your bridge." Drevin stared at her. This human woman. This creature from a species he had dismissed as inferior. She had destroyed everything he had built in a single night. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you hide? Why pretend to be weak?" Myra's expression did not change. "Because we hoped we would never have to be strong again. We were wrong. You made us remember what we are. And what is that?" "Survivors?" Drevin closed his eyes. For a long moment, he was silent. Then, slowly, he raised his hand. "All Vorith forces," he said into the intercom. His voice was dead. "This is High Marshal Drevin. I order full and unconditional surrender. Lay down your weapons. The battle is over." Transmission ended. 2 hours later, Admiral Mira walked through the corridors of Haven Station. Around her, human survivors were being treated by medical teams. Children who had hidden in storage rooms were being reunited with their parents. Engineers were already working to repair the damaged sections. Captain Park Do-yeon met her at the main observation deck. He was sitting in a wheelchair, his wounds bandaged, but his spirit unbroken. "Admiral," he said, trying to stand. Mira walked to his side and looked out at the stars. Through the window, they could see the human fleet floating in formation. Thousands of ships, their lights shining like a new constellation. "You saved us," Do-yeon said quietly. "All of us. I don't know how to thank you." "You sent the signal," Mira replied. "That took courage. You knew help might not come in time, but you sent it anyway." "Someone needed to know what happened here." Mira nodded. "Someone did. And now the whole galaxy will know." She turned to face him. "The Voruth have been defeated, but this isn't over. They'll return to their empire and tell their leaders what happened. Word will spread. Every species in this sector of the galaxy will hear about the Battle of Haven. Is that good or bad?" "Both." Mira looked back at the fleet. "For 80 years we hid our strength. We wanted peace. We thought if we looked weak, no one would bother us. That was a mistake. Weakness invites attack. So what now? Now, we show them the truth. Not to threaten, not to conquer, just to make sure they understand." An hour later, Admiral Mira broadcast a message on every frequency. It reached every ship, every station, every planet within 100 light years. It was translated into dozens of alien languages, and the galaxy listened. "My name is Admiral Kung Mira of the United Earth Navy. I speak on behalf of humanity." Her face appeared on screens across the stars. Behind her, the human fleet was visible through the bridge windows of the Hansen. 3 days ago, the Vorith Dominion attacked Haven Station, a peaceful mining colony at the edge of human space. They killed civilians. They captured hostages. They celebrated their victory and announced plans to conquer our homeworld. She paused. They celebrated too early. Ivorath believed we were weak because we chose peace. They read old reports. They saw that we had disbanded our armies. They assumed we had forgotten how to fight. They were wrong. Humanity did not stop building warships. We simply stopped showing them. We chose peace because we understood war too well. We buried our weapons and hoped we would never need them again. Today we needed them." And they answered. The camera pulled back, revealing the full scale of the human fleet. 3,000 warships stretched across the void like an ocean of steel and light. This is the United Earth Navy. Over 3,000 warships, 200,000 fighters, 5 million soldiers. We have been waiting for 80 years. Do not seek conquest. We do not want war. We want only to live in peace, to raise our children, to explore the stars. But if you threaten our people, if you touch our homes, if you harm our families," her eyes hardened, "we will come for you. We will find you. And we will not stop until every last one of you pays for what you have done. To the Voroth Dominion, you have seen what we can do. Remember it. Tell your empire. Tell your children. Tell everyone who asks. Humanity is awake, and we are watching." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations received the message. Some were terrified. Some were angry. But all of them understood. It's the same truth. Humans were not weak. They had never been weak. They had just been sleeping on Haven Station. Captain Park Do-yeon watched the stars from his wheelchair. Lieutenant Eunice stood beside him, her arm in a sling, but her spirit strong. Chief Engineer Tai-woo leaned against the window, finally allowing himself to rest. "Do you think they'll leave us alone now?" Yuna asked. Do-yeon thought about it. He thought about the Voroth and their celebration. He thought about Admiral Mira and her cold eyes. He thought about the fleet that had crossed the galaxy to save them. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe not. But if they come again, we'll be ready." "How do you know?" Do-yeon smiled faintly. "Because that's what humans do. We survive. We adapt. We fight. It's in our blood. It's in our bones. We've been doing it for 100,000 years." He looked out at the fleet still patrolling the space around Haven Station. "Guardians of humanity. Protectors of the innocent. They thought they could destroy us," he said quietly. "They thought a single attack would break us. But they don't understand. You can't break something that's already been broken 1,000 times and rebuilt itself every single time." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. "So what happens now?" "Now." Do-yeon leaned back in his wheelchair and closed his eyes. "Now we rebuild. We heal. We remember our dead. And we make sure the galaxy never forgets what happens when you threaten humanity." Outside, the stars burned on. The fleet stood guard. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the message continued to spread. From planet to planet, from empire to empire, from one end of the galaxy to the other, humanity was awake, and they would never sleep again.